I had this whole idea of this video I wanted to make, kind of explaining my thoughts and ideas on sexual preference. And so the first thing I did when I started to do that was Googled sexual preference. And it turns out that the term sexual preference is considered offensive. And the reason that some people consider it offensive is because the term preference implies choice. So my first reaction to finding this out was that there seemed to be a lot of things I'm supposed to find offensive as a gay person that I didn't even know about. The second thing I thought about was that didn't really make sense to me. So it turns out that there are actually different types of preferences, and in psychology there are preferences that are non-choice preferences, like biological preference and genetic preference. And sexual preference falls under this category. So if you're educated, referring to it as sexual preference isn't actually bad or shouldn't offend you as long as someone is referring to it as a biological or genetic or non-choice preference, which I am in this video, considering it a non-choice preference. So my first idea, before I did any of this research, was to compare sexual preference to another type of preference, and I was just going to compare it to a food preference. And then after I started doing this research, I realized maybe that would be offensive to compare your preference for gender to a preference for food. But crazily enough, there are now European scientists that are researching a new project on the genetics of food preference. So this research actually says that our genetic makeup may dictate which foods we find attractive and which ones we don't. So I was like, that's crazy. It's all genetic. It's all non-choice preference. So I'm going to compare sexuality with food preference. And it's not offensive. Okay, so let's just talk about food. I'm going to compare apples and bananas and my preference for them, my personal preference. I don't like bananas at all. I've never liked them. I don't know why. It must be in my genes. So when I'm faced with an apple or a banana, I'm going to choose an apple 99.9999999% of the time. But on this same spectrum, there are going to be people who pick a banana 99.9999999% of the time because they don't like apples. And that's okay. In that same way, on a preference for men and women, I'm going to choose a woman at 9.999999999% of the time. And on the opposite side, there are girls that are going to like boys 99.999% of the time. In science, those two ends are the extreme cases, right? In real life, I think we can all agree that you're more likely to find someone who's going to pick an apple 60% of the time and a banana 40% of the time, and people that pick an apple 50% of the time and banana 50% of the time, or banana, whatever, any combination of these percentages. It actually kind of makes more sense to be someone who just likes them both. That's actually a concept that makes more sense to us, right? Meeting someone who likes apples and bananas is not that freaking weird. We wouldn't consider someone who likes apples and bananas selfish or indecisive or confused. We would just consider them a person who finds joy in apples and bananas. So, if sexuality is preference, a non-choice preference, genetic preference, just like liking one food or another is maybe now a genetic preference, then would you not agree that someone who is homosexual and someone who is straight are actually the extremes? And there are a hell of a lot more people that fall in the middle than on the ends. Doesn't that make more sense? It's funny because I feel like it's not that hard of a concept to imagine or understand, but like we still don't really get that in real life, right? Like we still have a hard time believing that someone can find equal pleasure in dating a girl as they can in dating a guy. And I think that has a lot to do with just stereotype. If we would stop thinking of bisexuals as the crazy girl at a party looking for attention and making out with girls, or the gay guy who is just half closeted, maybe we could open ourselves up to the idea that it actually makes a lot more sense to find pleasure in both. My main reason for making this video is that I've just seen a lot of negative reactions to bisexuality. And the thing that bothers me so much about that is that so much of that negativity comes from the gay community. I just can't wrap my head around how a group of people who have been personally oppressed because of their sexuality could do the same thing to someone else. Like, you'd think we'd understand more than anyone how painful that is, but yet we do it. So those are just my opinions on sexuality and what I think of sexual preference, and yeah, I want to hear what y'all's ideas are about sexual preference, and I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about, and I like getting new ideas and opinions about it, so leave me comments. And if you think this shirt's cool and you want to get one for yourself, I'll have information on how you can find them in the description box. My brow's a little messed up.